I don't need you in my life anymore, Mom. Those words hung in the air between us, sharp and cold like icicles. My daughter Olivia stood in my kitchen, her chin raised, defiance in her eyes. She was 23, beautiful, brilliant, and so very angry. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the world tilting on its axis. 23 years of tucking her in at night, of kissing scraped knees, of college applications and heartbreak talks, all dismissed with a single sentence. I could have argued, could have reminded her of all I'd sacrificed, all I'd given, could have fought to stay in her life. Instead, I took a deep breath and said the hardest words I've ever spoken. If that's what you want, I'll respect your decision. The shock on her face was brief, quickly replaced by a nod of finality. She hadn't expected me to let go so easily. But sometimes, loving someone means letting them find their own way back to you, or accepting that they might not. I never planned to be a single mother. When I met Robert in college, we had dreams, traveling the world, building careers, maybe having children someday. But life rarely follows our careful plans. I was 26 when Olivia came into our lives, unexpected, but immediately cherished. Robert was less enthusiastic. "This isn't what we agreed on," he said, pacing our small apartment. "We're not ready." Visual cue, young woman sitting on couch, looking at ultrasound photo, soft afternoon light. He tried for 3 years to be the father Olivia deserved, but I'd see him staring out windows, distracted, distant, the restlessness growing like a tide. "I can't do this anymore, Diane," he finally said one night, after Olivia was asleep. "I'm suffocating here." He left the next morning. Olivia stood at the window, waving goodbye to her daddy, not understanding he wouldn't be back for dinner. The visits grew further apart, then stopped altogether. The child support checks came regularly, at least. Robert's guilt translated into financial dependability, if nothing else. Sound cue, gentle piano, melancholic but not overly sentimental. And so it was just Olivia and me. I rearranged my life completely, put my career in marketing on hold, took a more flexible administrative position instead, found an affordable apartment near a good school, learned how to stretch every dollar, how to be both mother and father. "Where's Daddy?" Olivia would ask, sometimes for months after he'd gone. "Daddy lives far away now," I'd answer, keeping my voice steady. "But he loves you very much." Whether that was true or not, I couldn't say, but I believed children deserved to think the best of their parents, even the absent ones. Visual cue, mother and young daughter at park, pushing swing, autumn leaves falling. Those early years were exhausting, but beautiful. Olivia was a bright, curious child who loved stories. We developed our own little rituals: Sunday morning pancakes, movie nights every Friday, summer picnics at the lake. "It's just us against the world," I'd sometimes tell her, usually after particularly difficult days. She'd nod solemnly, her small hand finding mine. "The dynamic duo," she'd reply, her special name for us. As Olivia grew older, she remained bright and curious, but other traits emerged too. Stubbornness, independence, a fierce determination to prove herself. "I can do it myself," became her mantra around age 8. Whether it was tying her shoes, completing school projects, or navigating conflicts with friends, she wanted to handle everything on her own. I admired her self-reliance while quietly worrying about it too. Had I pushed her to grow up too quickly? Was this independence healthy, or a child's way of controlling what she could in a life where her father had chosen to leave? When Olivia turned 12, Robert suddenly reappeared. He'd remarried, had 2 small children with his new wife. "I want to reconnect with Olivia," he told me over the phone. "I've made mistakes, but I'd like to try again." Visual cue, woman on phone, expression conflicted, looking at photo of daughter on wall. I should have been angry, should have reminded him of all the birthdays he'd missed, but Olivia deserved the chance to know her father. "I'll talk to her," I said, "but it's her decision." To my surprise, Olivia was cautiously excited. "Do you think he'll like me?" she asked, suddenly looking younger than her years. Oh, sweetheart, he'll love you. How could he not? For a while, things went well. Robert took Olivia on weekend outings, introduced her to her half-siblings. Olivia bloomed under this new attention. Dad says I'm just like him, she told me one evening, her voice proud. He says I've got his creative mind. I bit back the urge to point out that her storytelling had flourished long before he'd returned. Instead, I smiled. You've definitely got his eyes. The teenage years arrived with all their expected turbulence. Olivia, once my open book, became guarded, private. Our dynamic duo fractured as she sought independence, testing boundaries. Why can't I stay out until midnight? Jessica's mom lets her. Because Jessica's mom isn't me, and you're 14, not 18. The conversations began to follow a pattern. Her pushing, me holding firm, her storming off to her room. Standard teenage rebellion, I told myself. Visual cue. Teen girl slamming bedroom door, mother standing in hallway looking tired. But underneath the normal friction, something else was happening. Robert's influence was growing. His parenting style was decidedly more permissive than mine. No curfews at his house, no chore requirements. Dad trusts me, Olivia would say during our arguments. He doesn't treat me like a child. Trust is earned, I'd reply, maintaining my calm. And part of my job is to be the parent, not the friend. These differences created a wedge. Increasingly, Olivia compared her life with me to her weekends with Robert, and my stricter household came up wanting. When Olivia turned 16, Robert and his wife moved to the same city, just 30 minutes away. What had been weekend visits became much more frequent contact. Sound cue, low tension building, subtle and not melodramatic. Dad says I could come live with them if I wanted to, Olivia mentioned casually one evening. They have plenty of space in the new house. The knife I was using paused mid-air. Is that what you want? She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. I don't know. Maybe. It would be different. Different isn't always better, I said carefully. It might be. You're always so rigid about everything. I have rules because I care about you, Olivia. About your future. Dad cares about me too. He just shows it differently. I didn't say what I was thinking. That it's easy to be the fun parent when you haven't been doing the day-to-day work for 16 years. Instead, I said, whatever you decide, I want you to be happy. She stayed with me, but the idea had been planted. A possibility. An alternative. Visual cue. Mother alone in kitchen, looking at family photos on refrigerator. By her senior year, the tension had grown thicker. We disagreed about almost everything. Where she should apply to college, what she should study. I want to major in creative writing, she announced one evening. That's wonderful, I said carefully. But have you thought about pairing it with something more practical? Maybe communications or education? Her eyes flashed. Dad says I should follow my passion, that I've got real talent. I know you have talent. I just want you to have options. Options to do what? End up like you? Working a job you hate because it's practical? The words stung. I made choices based on what you needed, Olivia. On being there for you. Well, I never asked you to sacrifice everything, she shot back. It was our first truly hurtful argument, but not our last. Olivia chose a university 6 hours away, with a well-regarded creative writing program. Robert offered to pay the tuition, something I couldn't have afforded on my own. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt replaced. Unnecessary. Sound cue. Dissonant piano notes, tension building. The summer before she left was tense. I tried to bridge the growing gap between us. Let's have a special dinner, just the two of us, before you go, I suggested. I can't, she replied, not looking up from her phone. Dad and Melissa are taking me shopping for dorm stuff that weekend. I swallowed my disappointment. Another time, then. But there wasn't another time. The days slipped away, and suddenly it was move-in day. Robert and Melissa drove Olivia to campus. It makes more sense, Olivia explained. Their SUV has more space for my things. I stood in our apartment, too large now for just one person, and wondered when exactly I'd lost my daughter. For the first 2 years of college, Olivia and I maintained a strained connection, weekly. Phone calls that grew shorter, holiday visits that felt formal and uncomfortable. She spent most breaks with Robert and his family. I told myself it was natural. She was finding her independence. And if that identity included more of Robert than me, well, that was her choice to make. Then came the summer before her junior year. Olivia had been accepted into a prestigious writing workshop in New York. She was thrilled, but there was a problem. It costs $4,000, she told me over the phone. Dad says he can't afford it right now. The twins need braces, and they're renovating the kitchen. Visual cue, woman on phone, expression concerned but thoughtful. I'd been saving for years. A small account I added to whenever possible, originally intended to help Olivia with graduate school or a first apartment. I can help, I said. I have some money set aside. There was a pause. Really? You'd do that? Of course. This is important for your future. 2 weeks later, the money sent, I waited for Olivia to visit before leaving for New York. She'd promised to come by to thank me in person, but the day she was supposed to arrive, I received a text instead. Sorry, can't make it today. Last-minute lunch with Dad to say goodbye. I'll call when I get to NY. Sound cue, single piano notes, sparse and melancholy. The call from New York never came. Instead, I followed her workshop experience through social media posts. I sent encouraging comments that received likes but no replies. When she returned in August, she went straight to Robert's house. Another text. Staying at Dad's for a few days. Catch up soon. Soon stretched into a week, then 2. Finally, I called her. I thought you might want to get lunch, I suggested. Tell me all about New York. Oh, she sounded distracted. Sure, how about tomorrow? The cafe near the bookstore? Visual cue. Woman waiting at cafe table, checking watch, straightening silverware. The Olivia who arrived at the cafe was almost a stranger, her hair styled differently, a new confidence in her posture. She'd grown up while I wasn't looking. She told me about the workshop, speaking with animation. Then she mentioned her plans for the coming semester. I'm not going back to state, she said, stirring her coffee. I'm transferring to Bartlett. I froze. Bartlett? That's in California. I know. Their writing program is amazing. One of my instructors in New York recommended it. But that's so far. And what about your scholarships? Your friends? She shrugged. I'll make new friends. And Dad says he'll help with tuition. Robert again. Always Robert, making grand gestures, while I was left with practical concerns. Sound cue, tense strings, building slightly. When did you decide this? I asked. A while ago. I applied during the workshop. I just found out I was accepted yesterday. Yesterday? The word felt hollow. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? Her expression hardened. I'm 20. I don't need your permission. Not permission, Olivia. Conversation, consideration. I'm still your mother. A fact you never let me forget. She set her cup down with a sharp click. Dad understands this is my decision, my life. I'm trying to understand. This seems very sudden. It's not sudden to me. I need space, Mom, room to become who I'm meant to be. I looked at my daughter across the table and felt the distance between us like a physical ache. And you can't do that with me in your life? She met my gaze directly. Not with you hovering, questioning every decision, always worrying, always reminding me of what could go wrong instead of what could go right. That's not fair, Olivia. Isn't it? When have you ever just supported me without adding warnings? When have you just believed in me completely? Visual cue, 2 women at cafe table, tension visible, other patrons glancing over. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had always been the practical parent. But that came from love, from wanting to protect her. I've always believed in you, I said quietly. Everything I've done has been because I love you. If you love me, then let me go. Let me do this my way, without making me feel guilty about it. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm trying to be included in your life. She stood abruptly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The guilt trips, the emotional manipulation. And then it happened. The words that would change everything. I don't need you in my life anymore, Mom. Her voice was cold. I'm done trying to live up to your expectations, done feeling like I'm never enough, done with the constant judgment. I sat there, stunned. People at neighboring tables were glancing over now, drawn by her raised voice. Is that really what you want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, I want to live my life without your shadow over it, without your fears holding me back. I could have fought harder, could have reminded her of everything we'd been through together, but in that moment, a strange clarity came over me. You cannot force someone to want you in their life. If that's what you want, I said evenly, I'll respect your decision. She blinked, clearly surprised by my acquiescence. She'd expected a fight, tears, pleas. Instead, I reached for my purse, placed money on the table for our drinks. I love you, Olivia. I always will. If you want me back in your life, I'll be here. I walked out with my head high, tears blurring my vision but not falling. Not yet. That would come later, in the privacy of my empty apartment. Sound cue, deep, resonant strings, emotional but dignified. The first month of Olivia's absence was the hardest. I'd catch myself picking up the phone to call her before remembering she didn't want to hear from me. I'd see something she'd like and make a mental note to tell her, only to remember there would be no opportunity. I didn't check her social media. That felt like spying, like violating the boundary she'd established. If she wanted me out of her life, I would respect that completely. Robert called me just once. Olivia told me about your disagreement, he said awkwardly. Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic? She's just asserting her independence. This isn't about independence, I replied. This is about respect. Olivia made her feelings clear. I'm honoring her wishes. By cutting her off completely? That's a bit extreme, isn't it? I almost laughed at the irony. Robert, who had disappeared from Olivia's life for years, lecturing me about being extreme. I haven't cut her off. I've stepped back. There's a difference. Visual cue. Woman deleting social media apps from phone, expression resolute. Slowly, painfully, I began rebuilding my life, a life that didn't revolve around being Olivia's mother. I enrolled in evening classes to finish the degree I'd abandoned when she was born. I joined a book club. I redecorated the apartment, turning Olivia's old room into a small home office. Each step felt both like betrayal and liberation. Was I giving up on my daughter by creating a life without her? Or was I finally doing what I should have done years ago, living for myself? 3 months passed, then 6. The holidays approached, the first I would spend without Olivia. My sister Catherine invited me to join her family for Thanksgiving. You can't be alone, Diane, she insisted over the phone. It's not healthy. I'm not alone by choice, I reminded her. And besides, I might volunteer at the community center that day. They always need help. Sound cue, gentle, reflective music, beginning to shift toward hopefulness. I did volunteer that Thanksgiving, serving meals at a local shelter. The work was exhausting but fulfilling. I came home tired but somehow lighter. Christmas was harder. I put up a small tree, more out of habit than desire to celebrate. Catherine's family came to visit for an afternoon, filling the apartment with noise and laughter that felt alien after so many quiet months. On impulse, I wrapped a small gift for Olivia, a first edition of her favorite childhood book that I'd found months ago. I wrote a simple card. Thinking of you. Love always, Mom. I mailed it to Robert's address with no expectation of a response. It wasn't about getting anything back. It was about letting her know that despite everything, love remained. Visual cue, woman carefully wrapping book, writing card with thoughtful expression. January brought snow and a new semester of classes. I threw myself into studying, surprising myself with how much I enjoyed learning again. By spring, I'd secured a part-time internship at a small marketing firm specializing in nonprofit work. Life developed a new rhythm. Work, school, the occasional dinner with friends. Not the life I'd planned, but one with its own satisfactions. The ache of Olivia's absence never disappeared entirely, but it became something I carried rather than something that defined me. Sound cue. Positive, forward-moving music. Still gentle, but with more momentum. Summer arrived, marking a year since Olivia had walked out of the cafe and my life. I'd sent her a birthday card in May, as I'd sent the Christmas gift, a simple hello, a reminder of love, without expectation. Then, on a warm June evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Hello? Silence then. Mom? Her voice sounded small, uncertain, so different from the angry young woman at the cafe. My heart leapt, then steadied. Olivia, it's good to hear your voice. I didn't know if you'd answer. I'll always answer when you call. More silence. I waited, letting her find her words. I got your cards, and the book. A pause. Thank you. You're welcome. Mom, things haven't exactly worked out like I planned. I closed my eyes briefly, fighting the urge to jump in, to fix whatever was wrong. That wasn't what she needed from me. Do you want to tell me about it? Visual cue. Woman on phone, sitting very still, expression careful but hopeful. The story came slowly. Bartlett hadn't been the perfect fit she'd imagined. The program was competitive, cutthroat even. She'd struggled to make friends. Robert's financial support had become inconsistent. More family expenses, other priorities. I had to drop out, she admitted finally. I couldn't afford the tuition when Dad stopped paying. I'm working at a coffee shop now, trying to save up. Maybe go back to state next year. I see, I said carefully. That sounds like a sensible plan. You're not going to say, I told you so? No? What would be the point of that? Another long pause. I miss you, Mom. The words I'd longed to hear for a year. Yet I didn't rush to reassure her that everything would be fine, that I'd fix her problems. Instead, I asked, what exactly are you missing, Olivia? What do you mean? Are you missing me, the person? Or are you missing having someone to help solve your problems? Sound cue, soft, contemplative piano notes. Her answer was honest. Maybe both. I don't know. I just know that I've been thinking about you a lot, about how you always kept going, no matter what. You never gave up. Neither will you, I said with certainty. You're stronger than you realize. I don't feel very strong right now. Strength isn't about not having doubts. It's about facing them, learning from them. When did you get so philosophical? A hint of her old humor in the question. I've had a lot of time to think this past year. As our call neared its end, she asked hesitantly, would it be okay if I called again sometime? I'd like that very much. And maybe I could come visit. During winter break? My door is always open to you, Olivia. Always has been. Olivia did visit that winter. Our reunion was awkward at first, both of us careful, uncertain of our new boundaries. But as days passed, something shifted. We were finding our way back to each other, but differently this time, as equals, as two adults with separate lives who chose to remain connected. She stayed for 2 weeks, then returned to California. Not to Bartlett, but to the community college where she'd enrolled. It's not as prestigious, she told me, but the teachers actually care about the students, and I can afford it on my own. The pride in her voice when she said, on my own, told me everything. She was finding her independence, her resilience. Sound cue, warm, gentle music building gradually. Our relationship continues to heal, slowly, deliberately. We talk every couple of weeks now. She shares her writing with me sometimes, asks for my opinion. Not my approval, my opinion. There's a difference, and I respect it. Last month she called with news. I've been accepted to state for the spring semester with a partial scholarship. Olivia, that's wonderful. I'll be back in town. Not living with you, she added quickly. I found an apartment with a roommate, but we could see each other more often. I'd like that. And Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us, about what I said that day in the cafe. I took a deep breath. We don't have to talk about that if you're not ready. No, I want to. What I said about not needing you in my life, that wasn't fair or true. Visual cue. Split screen. Woman on phone in living room, young woman on phone in small apartment. You were finding your way, Olivia. We all say things we don't fully mean when we're trying to break free. Maybe, but I've realized something this past year. Needing someone and wanting them in your life aren't the same thing. I don't need you to solve my problems or protect me from mistakes, but I want you in my life. There's a difference. The wisdom in her words brought tears to my eyes. There is indeed. When I come back, I'd like to try again. Not as the dynamic duo exactly, but maybe as, I don't know, something new. I'd like that very much. After we hung up, I stood by the window, watching the city lights come on as dusk fell. The past 2 years had changed both of us. My daughter had discovered her own strength, and I had rediscovered myself, not just as Olivia's mother, but as a woman with her own dreams, her own path. Visual cue, woman looking out window at sunset, expression peaceful. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go, not forever necessarily, but long enough for them to discover who they are apart from you, long enough for them to choose to come back, not out of need or obligation, but out of genuine desire for connection. Olivia had said she didn't need me in her life anymore, and in letting her prove it, I'd given her an unexpected gift, the chance to discover that while she didn't need me to solve her problems, to guide her path, she wanted me beside her anyway. And isn't that what all parents hope for in the end? Not that our children will need us forever, but that they'll grow strong enough to stand on their own, and then choose freely and fully to keep us in their lives anyway. Next week, Olivia comes home, not to stay, but to visit, to share a meal, exchange stories, build something new between us. I've already bought ingredients for pancakes, her favorite weekend breakfast since childhood. Some traditions are worth keeping, even as we create new ones. Visual cue, kitchen counter with pancake ingredients laid out, morning sunlight streaming in, window. When my daughter said she didn't need me in her life anymore, I let her prove it. Not because I believed it was true, but because I believed in her strength, her resilience, her capacity to find her own way back home. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's opening your hands and trusting that what's meant to return will.